Dawn Stenslamenti back with you here on The Dawn Show. This is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. It's about cold cases and bringing justice to families who've lost loved ones to violent crimes. We're talking with Risa Vetri-Furman. Thanks for being here, DA of Montgomery County. And one of the many cases that you solved, that your office and detectives solved, was the case of a little girl, 9 years old, Skylar Kaufman. And I know that even though we can't bring back children, this meant a lot to you as a DA and a mom.
Sure. That
you were able to solve this case.
This was one of the most gut-wrenching cases that I ever had to experience in my life. I even this many years later, just thinking about it is upsetting, because I know what she went through, and it's just horrifying to think about.
And we have pictures of her funeral. Mm-hmm. This community just devastated. I think no parent can relate to this moment of your child dying, but in such a violent way, and then not knowing who did it. And that's really why I do shows like these on cold cases, for cases that are unsolved, for people to come forward. But in this case, what kills me is, and I have a 9-year-old, is that these parents, there was an incident with the perp, and the parents did everything, the little girl did everything right, the parents did everything right, and it still went wrong.
There's no easy answer to something like this. I mean, you have a 9-year-old little girl who's living in a community that's just generally, it's a quiet, it's a safe community. She was living in this apartment complex, and after school playing outside, with her dolls, probably with some friends at a certain point in time. It's what our kids do. And the idea that you're going to keep a kid locked inside is crazy. It's not the way we live. And yet, just in a very short period of time where she was outside, she came face to face with one of her neighbors again, and it had been someone she had reported before for not any bad conduct, just she was inside his apartment at one point.
And here he is.
Correct. And there had been an encounter which had been reported, and the police had responded, and it was a situation where there wasn't, tragically, anything more that the police could do at the time. And just 2 weeks later, less than 2 weeks later, he targeted her and he killed her.
And sexually
assaulted her. And when you think about it as a parent, you think, how do you protect your child from something like that? I think the police department in that community has to be thinking, is there anything else that we could have done? What else could have been done to protect her? I mean, I know that people are plagued with those kind of questions, and in the end, all we were able to do was make sure that this monster was taken off the street forever. And I know that that's not satisfaction. I mean,
but he had a juvie record, right? That was sealed.
Well, understand the way the juvenile system works. When someone has history in juvenile court, and not necessarily criminal conduct, but just their record in juvenile court, it's confidential. And so when there's background that someone's involved with, it's not available to law enforcement. So in this situation, there was information, looking back in hindsight, that would have been extremely valuable for the local police to have had early on, and they never had, and they couldn't have had. It's not like they didn't do anything to get this information. It was not available to them. Had they known it at the time of that first episode, I think they would have handled things differently. And you can't second guess. You don't know what would have happened, but I have to think there's a chance that her life could have been saved, but that information from his past was protected so that they would have never been able to know. And that's the tragedy of it, because there's no answer. You look back when this happened, just like everyone else, my attitude was, somebody must have dropped the ball. There must have been something that somebody else could have done. And it was just pretty horrifying to us that there really wasn't.
Well, it's aggravating to me that sometimes I just think we give too many rights to the bad guys. I struggle with this. I know you struggle with this. It's just not right.
As a society, we struggle with it. I mean, on one hand, you think about the rights individuals have, and their right to privacy, and I of course respect those. Mm-hmm. But then you're balancing the safety rights of the community. And this is one of those cases where there was information that, had the police known about it, had it been accessible to them, available to them, had it not been protected and hidden, something could have, the course of history could have been different. And I can't ignore that. I can't forget that.
And none of us should.
We shouldn't.
I know that you were there the day that after Troutman, he confessed and was brought in, and the community was reacting. So let's take a look at James Lee Troutman at that moment. Risa was right there.
Dumbass! Die in hell! Pussy! Dumbass! Yes, hold on.
Marisa, you were there, you witnessed that. What was that scene like?
You know, it's interesting when you look back on it in hindsight, that man deserved everything he got and more. I mean, he is evil, and he deserved it all. But as a prosecutor, my responsibility is to make sure that that person, at that point in time who was presumed innocent, can get a fair trial. And I found myself working very hard that day and then in the days after to try to just calm things down so that we could make sure that he could get a fair trial. And that's the struggle, because as a mom and just as someone who's been a child advocate forever and someone who has, I mean, I've devoted my life to the safety of kids and the protection of kids, when you know something like this happened and you know that he's the guy who did it and you know that notwithstanding legal presumptions, you got the right guy. You don't want to have to tamp that kind of emotion down, but the community was justifiably just so outraged, so angry. I mean, it was visceral. You could feel it. You could feel that hatred, that need, that sense of or desire for vengeance. I mean, I think if the police had not been there barricading the area, they would have stormed him. I mean, it was just such an angry mob situation.
Listen, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come here tonight. And I hope, and I know you hope, that somebody with information about these cold cases or maybe another unsolved case that you know about, please call. You can call us, you can call the DA's office. We gave you websites. You can be anonymous, but it's so important. Justice is important. On a much lighter note, the intimate side of baby boomer women, money, children, stress, it's all next.